and welcome to the News 9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News 9 Plus. Leader of the opposition Rahul Gandhi demanded a debate on the Constitution of India by writing to the Speaker on the 26th of November. And this was agreed to by the ruling front. Now, 26th of November this year marks the 75th anniversary of our Constitution's adoption, and so what was expected to be an occasion for a quiet reflection and assessment of the functioning of the ideas contained in the document and a balanced attempt to identify its shortcomings and the formation of a general consensus on the way forward was seen as an opportunity by both the sides to engage in a competition of vilifying each other. Rahul Gandhi repeated his constitution is in danger remark and of course raised the Adani issue, and Prime Minister Modi highlighted his government's policies and decisions since it took office in 2014, and then also went on to list out the past Congress governments' instances of disrespecting the constitution during their decades-long rule at the centre. Now, the Congress party may have found people connecting with this during the general elections, but subsequent elections in the states of Haryana and Maharashtra have shown that there are no takers for the constitution narrative. And so what is this narrative all about that the Congress insists on sticking to and yet cannot articulate or connect with the people? Also, while the Congress is still going on with its narratives, the Indi alliance is now seeing calls for leadership change in the India bloc. How much of these constitution and Adani issues impacting the opposition and their unity? Joining us to discuss that are former Secretary General, Lok Sabha and constitutional expert Mr. P.D.T. Acharya. We also have Nikhil Jain, political analyst and advocate, joining us, and we also have Mr. Harsh Dahiya, advocate and political analyst, joining us on this broadcast. Thank you all of you gentlemen. Let me begin with Mr. P.D.T. Acharya. Talk to us. You're talking about a constitution that has held in such good stead for so long. It united a country that many thought at the time of its formation would not last very long. And then you have the opposition now repeating the constitution is in danger remark. Clearly, it might have found some resonance in the Lok Sabha elections, but not post that.
Well, normally I do not discuss politics. And I do not intend to do so today also. Now, I can say something about the discussion that has taken place in the Lok Sabha on Friday and Saturday, and what I felt about that discussion. Actually, it was the discussion on the Constitution, a debate on the Constitution of India. In the 75th year, they have titled us as a glorious journey of the Constitution and so on. So one would expect that a high level of discussion or debate would take place in Parliament on the Constitution. And the least that one would expect is to have a political discussion in the House. Of course, it is a political forum. Naturally, politics will come. And in all discussions, it is politics that will be be the major theme. But the point is, when you discuss or debate the Constitution of India, then what are the issues which need to be highlighted? How the Constitution has helped this country so far? Whether we have worked the Constitution properly, whether the Constitution has stood us in good stead, and what changes, what changes are necessary in the Constitution in the future, and all these items could figure in a discussion on the Constitution. But I happened to listen to some of the speeches made, but I must confess that I was a bit disappointed, because much of the discussion was on political issues. So it was less on constitution and more on politics. And then the usual slugfest between the BJP and the government and the Congress.
Right.
And finally, the debate was replied to by the Prime Minister, who, in his own usual way, attacks Nehru and the Gandhi family and so on. So these are all things which are predictable now. And if you expected a very high-level debate on the Constitution and how it helped the country all these 75 years,
Okay.
And etc., they were disappointed.
Fair enough. Point taken. The quality of the debate was clearly disappointing. Let me bring this to Mr. Harsh Dahiya as well. Mr. Harsh Dahiya, P.D.T. Acharya is talking about the level at which the discourse was in the parliament, and the question we're asking is the level to which the discourse is about the constitution, both inside the parliament and outside of it.
Krishna, one thing is clear that the whole failed rhetoric of Congress about the constitution khatre mein hai, samvidhan khatre mein hai, is failing. It is clear from the subsequent elections of Haryana and Maharashtra. We have clearly seen that it is not working, but the Congress is trying to keep alive an agenda which has already failed. Second thing is that I agree with Mr. Acharya that the whole debate on constitution in the parliament was anything but about the constitution of the country. It was more concentrated on Adani, Ambani, and all the other issues related to the government and the opposition, but there was hardly any talk about the constitution. The surprising thing to see over here is that the Congress is unable to highlight even a single instance wherein the BJP government has tried to change the nature of the constitution. And let me remind the viewers that constitution is a living document. It is not a primitive book which should not change or cannot change. Constitution being living document, it has to live up with the ethos of the society as it gradually changes, and the constitution has to live up to that. And second thing is that so far there have been 108 amendments in the constitution, and the Congress fails to highlight that 80 of these amendments were done during their rule. And so far, under the Modi government, only 8 essential amendments have been done. And there are sufficient checks and balances in place. We have Supreme Court as well. We have the Parliament. What are you there in the Parliament for then? If you are unable to have a healthy debate on Constitution, if the Congress is not confident that they can stop the ruling party from making any wrong amendments, then what are they in the Parliament for? And they should have trust on Supreme Court. Supreme Court has stepped in time and again during various governments whenever any such attempt was made or was tried to made. So I don't think that rhetoric of constitution khatre mein hai is at all working with the people of the country. And if constitution was in danger, then it was during the emergency time when the 42nd amendment was brought in. And in the preamble as well, there were 2 words added, secular and socialist. If the Congress feels that the original version of the constitution was perfect, then we should go back on all 108 amendments. That includes the 42nd amendment as well, which added words like secular and socialist in the preamble, which was done by the Congress party then.
Let me take this across to Nikhil Jain as well. Nikhil, talk to us. We are having this conversation at a time when Congress's leadership of the entire opposition alliance, the India bloc, is being questioned.
No, Krishna, so far as Congress's leadership in the India Alliance is concerned, first of all, let's get this one thing very clear, that the India Alliance, since it came into being in July 2022 or 23, India Alliance has not had a convener, they've not had a chief, they've not had a president. There has been no single person who's been leading the India Alliance. Of course, Mallikarjun Kharge and Rahul Gandhi have had somewhat of a leadership role, but that's not because they're officially anointed as such, but simply because they're the leaders of the largest party in the bloc with the 99 MPs out of 240 that the India Alliance has, and no other party even has 40 MPs, right? So far as other players in the India Alliance now calling for a leadership change, first of all, I've already cleared, since there is no formal leader, I don't know how do you bring about a change. If indeed there is, a suggestion of installation of a leadership that is outside the Congress, I think it is also to do with the fact that India alliance is primarily an alliance for at the national level. Its primary purpose was to arrest the rise of the BJP in the Lok Sabha elections, which frankly it managed to do very well. It may not have won the elections, but at least it has stopped the BJP from getting a single majority. The alliance has 240 Lok Sabha MPs. Now, so far as the state elections are concerned, it was never an understanding, or at least never a formal understanding between the alliance that all the state elections would be fought together. And now what we're seeing is that no alliance, India alliance existed in Haryana, no India alliance existed in Maharashtra. A Mahavikas Agadi was there, but the India alliance wasn't there. No India alliance would seemingly exist in Delhi, and we're not sure about Bihar as of yet. I think what is being done right now by some of the members of the India Alliance is political posturing so as to have their foot forward or have a stronger foot within the alliance vis-a-vis the Congress. It is not particularly a affirmation or a decline or an affirmation or otherwise of Rahul Gandhi's leadership, because
Right.
Rahul Gandhi's leadership style, the issues that he's been raising is pretty much the same since the past 1 year. There's no
But Nikhil,
for a call for change at this point.
this particular constitution narrative is what is being questioned. Do you still need to stick, the constitution is in danger narrative? Because, we are celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Indian constitution, a document, a living document that has gone through enough and more changes. So, where is this coming from?
Krishna, I don't think this narrative is failing, and I'll tell you one simple reason why. The fact that the Modi government, some of whose members had the audacity to say right before the Lok Sabha elections कि हमें 400 पार इसलिए करना है क्योंकि हमें संविधान बदलना है. The fact that the forefathers of the BJP, or rather the ideological parents of the BJP, the RSS, did not accept the constitution when it came out, writing mouthpieces, articles against it in their mouthpiece organizer, did not accept the national flag till 2002. The fact that a party like that today is having a debate, and not just a 1 hour thing, but a multi-day debate on the Constitution of India right before the 75th anniversary of its enactment, is proof that Rahul Gandhi's narrative is working, because they are going to counter only that which they feel is essential. There are a number of issues Rahul Gandhi raises. He's raised about Hathras, he's raised about Sambal of recent, right? The BJP is not holding discussions on Nari Suraksha or rapes or something like that in the parliament, but they're holding discussions on the constitution because they feel this is an important narrative that the opposition has picked up, and they need to mount a counter narrative to it and prove to the country, no, we're not against the constitution, no, we're not going to change the constitution, despite whatever intentions they may have. Also, on the debates that have been going on in the parliament, I want to say one thing, that even though the topic was supposed to be on the constitution, Narendra Modi, in his 1 hour 50-minute address, the Prime Minister of the country, instead of talking about the Constitution, its merits, the Constituent Assembly, need for a positive change, he primarily restricted his bhashan to criticizing the Nehru Gandhi family, and that pretty much shows the kind of respect the Prime Minister and the BJP have for the Constitution, that one family is more to attack an opposition family is more important for you than to discuss the Constitution or what it has given to the country.
Right. P.D.T. Acharya, I had to ask you this. If you were to have the right kind of a debate on the Constitution, where do you think that debate should lie?
See, a right kind of debate on the Constitution obviously has to be about the Constitution, and whether the Constitution has failed us or whether the Constitution has helped us, and what are the shortcomings which have been found in the Constitution, etc., and what changes can be made, and what exactly is the basic character of the Constitution of India. There are 101 issues, aspects of the Constitution which can be discussed in a debate like this. So having spent 40 years in the Indian Parliament, I know what level of discussion should be in the Parliament. But I was disappointed that it did not rise to that level. Mostly people were speaking about political issues.
Yeah, fair enough. But the point, if you were to put your finger and say, items 1, 2, 3 should have been discussed while we are commemorating 75 years of the Indian Constitution.
You go over the history of the working of the Constitution, then there are many things which can be pointed out. There are many issues, which agitate the minds of the people today. For example, Article 3. Article 3 is an article which empowers Parliament to change the territory of a state, name of a state, diminish the area of a state and increase the area of a state, and create union territories and so on. But at the same time, the issue is whether Parliament has the power to convert a whole state into a union territory. That is a very important, very crucial issue. Whether Parliament has this power, well, the Article 303 gives this power to Parliament. Now, that is a question which should have been addressed. Because if Parliament has the power to convert one state into a union territory, that means logically the Parliament has the power to convert all the states into a union territory. How can the Constitution give such a power to Parliament? Especially when Article 1 says that India shall be a union of states and not union of union territories. Therefore, there is a problem in that, in the interpretation of Article 3 and the application of Article 3 in converting states into union territories. There is a serious problem. That such a problem should be addressed. And then the directive principles of state policy. Of course, earlier there was conflict between directive principles and fundamental rights. But the later judgments of the Supreme Court in Minerva Mills and all that, there the Supreme Court has taken a slightly different view. They said these are not contradictory to each other, these are complementary to each other, because the directive principles are the fundamental rules of governance. These are directions given to the state to formulate their policies in accordance with the directive principles. And one of the directive principles is contained in Article 39, which says that the state should see that no concentration of wealth takes place in a few hands, and the means of production remains in the public hands, or it should be such as would serve the public interest, larger public interest. These are some of the issues.
Fair enough.
But what has happened during the past 75 years? There has been a progressive concentration of wealth in the hands of people, a few people, and the incidence of poverty has increased, and the gap between the rich and the poor has increased. These are some of the issues which need to be discussed.
Right.
And
right. Point taken.
If you are true to the Constitution, then certainly you must address these problems and try to find solutions.
Right.
And then people who are ruling the country, they should do an introspection and see whether we are going in accordance with the directions contained in this Constitution, or we are treading on a different path.
Right. Harsh Dahiya, therein lies the truth, isn't it? You know, if it was the Congress party's narrative, then the BJP decided to take up that narrative and counter it because it is such an important issue. It is the 75 years of the Indian Constitution. And the Constitution is, as a narrative, in fact, was originally the BJP's.
That's the difference between Congress and BJP, Krishna, that BJP in itself is a party that is run by their own constitution as well, wherein you would see that Congress runs on the wishes of one single family. Anyone coming to the BJP party can rise to the top of the power if he works hard, and the BJP is the only party in this country which provides for that kind of platform, and the Congress doesn't. In order to rise in Congress, there
Nikhil wants to say something. Hold on. Nikhil wants to say something. Nikhil, go ahead.
Let me complete first, Krishna. So in Congress, if you want to rise to the power, there is no constitution, there is no rule of law, nothing. It is just the wishes of one single family that dictates who will rise to the power. And this is not me saying that. This is Mani Shankar Iyer as well, and several other Congress leaders who are right now either within the Congress or have left Congress. They are claiming, as Mani Shankar Iyer also claims in his book, that it was the Nehru Gandhi family, Nehru Firoz Gandhi family to be precise, that helped him rise to the helm of power. And once he ran out of favors with the Nehru Firoz Gandhi family, that's when he was out of power in Congress and otherwise as well. And coming to the Constitution of India, BJP is the party that honors not just the Constitution but also the founder of the Constitution, our very honorable Baba Sahib Ambedkar ji. You should understand that it was Congress that denied Bharat Ratna to Baba Sahib. And it was when Congress went out of power, he was conferred with the Bharat Ratna. And you should also remember, the viewers should remember, it is the Modi government which has developed the places related to Bharat Ratna Baba Saheb Ambedkar ji as Panch Tirath, not just in India but in the UK as well. In London, the BJP-led government acquired the Ambedkar House in London and converted it into a museum to honor the legacy of the great Baba Saheb Ambedkar ji.
Right, Nikhil, go ahead.
So first of all, my good friend Harsh says that the BJP is a party that runs by its own constitution. Well, let me tell him about Article 19 of the election of the national president in the BJP, which is a procedure that was certainly not followed when Amit Shah was made the president or when JP Nadda was made the president. However, instead, in the Congress party, you have a Mallikarjun Kharge, somebody who comes from no political lineage, a very poor laborer's son who saw his parents being murdered in front of his own eyes when he was a little teenager, and yet he has risen to the rank of the party president and the leader of opposition of the Rajya Sabha. Now, the BJP and Harsh may have their jibes that Kharge does have power, but the fact of the matter remains that he is the party president. Also, on the constitution of the BJP, let me read him the last para of Article 2 objective. The party shall bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of India as by law established and to the principles of socialism, secularism, and democracy. The same socialism and secularism that the BJP of today wants to remove from the preamble of the Indian Constitution, their own BJP Constitution mentions that we are going to stick to it. And so far as Baba Saheb being conferred with the Bharat Ratna or not is concerned, see, if you look at how Bharat Ratna awards were conferred up until the 1960s and 70s, by and large, people from the freedom movement were not conferred with these awards because, for heaven's sake, we call Baba Saheb the father of the Indian Constitution. We call Mahatma Gandhi the father of the nation. I don't really understand what is the need to give them a Bharat Ratna. I'm not saying that it should be given, it should not be given. It's simply that these people are above any sort of title that the state may confer on them. It was much later in the 90s when there was a consensus among the governments at the time and the oppositions at the time that, all right, we can issue posthumous Bharat Ratna awards to people who've died decades ago. But if you look at 60s and 70s, Bharat Ratnas were not generally awarded to either living people or people who had passed away 20 years ago or people who were coming out of the Indian independence movement. Mahatma Gandhi was not given one. That doesn't mean that Mahatma Gandhi is lesser than any person awarded the Bharat Ratna. Also, on a very important topic that you had raised, that 3 points, what you asked Mr. Achari, on 3 points that should have been discussed when we talk about the constitution today in the parliament, I would like to take it further from what Mr. Achari was speaking about, that perhaps we need a relook at how we look at the principle of federalism in the constitution. Like he's very, very pertinently mentioned about Article 3 and the power of the union and the power of the parliament in terms of reducing a state's status to a union territory. We need to look at other provisions as well, such as those concerning the governor. See, when those provisions were brought into the constitution back in 1950, India was a nation that was building. Most of the world did not think that we will survive as a country for even 10 years. That was a time when you needed a strong center. Today is a time when you need a good union government, but at the same time empowered states. And that cannot happen unless federalism is enshrined in a much stronger manner in the constitution, where an entity like the governor, which is essentially a union government, puppet, whether it is a Congress government or whether it is a BJP government, the powers of the governor and things like that need to be relooked. I think these are the discussions that a parliamentarian should have been having instead of talking about Nehru,
Right.
Gandhi, Soros, and all of that.
All right, fair enough. We will leave it at that. Mr. P.D.T. Achari, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. And same is the case with Mr. Harsh Dahiya and Mr. Nikhil Jain. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking time out to be with us here on the News 9 Plus show. Today is the 16th of December. In 1971, India fought a 13-day war that ended today with the creation of Bangladesh. Now, since the August of this year, after the ouster of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, India-Bangladesh relations have taken a nosedive. This ouster and the subsequent appointment of Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus as the head of the caretaker government has been a turning point within Bangladesh. It has witnessed widespread communal violence against minorities, especially the Hindus. Extremist groups such as the Jamaat-e-Islami have been allowed to operate freely. Temples are being desecrated, communities terrorized, and families driven to flee the country. Not just that, There are efforts to erase the legacy of Mujibur Rahman, the founding father of Bangladesh, by removing his images and monuments. Inflation, meanwhile, is spiraling out of control in Bangladesh, and Bangladesh's foreign exchange reserves have plummeted. The deposed Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has called Muhammad Yunus a fascist, seeking to stifle the spirit of the liberation war of Bangladesh. Now, Muhammad Yunus has just announced general elections to be held between the end of 2025 and the first half of 2026. The question is, what made him finally announce elections? What does this mean for the situation in Bangladesh, for the Bangladeshis? Why has the Bangladesh interim government not been able to establish law and order? How much does a change of the government in the US has led to the elections finally being announced in Bangladesh? From trying to reduce its reliance on India to accusing India of attempting to undermine the caretaker government, Bangladesh-India relations have soured. What will be the impact of these elections in Bangladesh on India, the neighbor that played a key role in its liberation? Joining us to discuss that, our former Indian diplomat and President, India Habitat Center, Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us. We also have Suhas Chakma, Director, Rights and Risks Analysis Group, joining us. Thank you, Suhas, for taking time out to be with us, sir. So let me begin by asking Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, talk to us. The situation in Bangladesh, to put it in simple terms, has gone from bad to worse. The question now is, with the elections now being announced, is it a sign of things to change and hopefully to change for the better?
I'm sorry to sound negative on your panel, but these elections have been delayed far too long. According to the Bangladesh constitution, there is no provision for such an extended period of a so-called interim regime. The interim regime should have called elections within 3 months, that is to say between August and November. Now it has been announced that it's the end of 25, beginning of 26, which means there's full 12 calendar months to go, and my presumption is that this is in order for Muhammad Yunus to encourage the extremist students to establish their own political party, to give time for the Jamaat to establish themselves, and to give more time for attacks on minorities, on supporters of the Awami League, on other minorities, including, I may add, Ahmadiyas, Sufis, Christians, Buddhists, etc., and to try to push out the major minority community, that is the Hindus, 1.5 crore of them, as many of them outside Bangladesh as possible. For that, he needs these 12 or 13 calendar months. As far as the Bangladesh economy is concerned, it will result in a complete economic crisis which will affect every section of the Bangladeshi lower middle class and the poorer people.
Right.
And it might very well result in a situation where Muhammad Yunus's supporters will not win if the election is free and fair. So it's a double gamble, a double whammy that he's taken on, and only time can tell what is going to happen. I don't think that the inauguration of President Trump on 20th January has influenced this decision. He has been under great pressure from the BNP to announce elections, but the BNP was expecting elections to be held within the next 3 months, not at the end of next year. So I don't think this will please the BNP either. We have to wait and see their reaction.
Right. Suhas, talk about too little too late. This election, it seems to be a ground being set up for the caretaker government to ensure the outcome is the only one that they want.
Well, absolutely. This government has no mandate. Whatever reforms he's talking about for holding elections, including election reforms, they are not mandated. The government itself is illegal, if you look at it. Even if you are to assume that there is a caretaker government, it has to be on for 3 months. So if they are going to extend it till next year, not only 2025, because he said after 2025 he may need another 6 months. So we are talking about possibly in 2026, and so the government itself is illegal. anything and everything he is doing illegal. This electoral reforms he is talking about, he has no mandate to do whatsoever. He even doesn't have the mandate to introduce any ordinance amendments and etc. So they do not have any mandate whatsoever to take this kind of decision. So he has taken these decisions, as Madam Ghosh had already mentioned. BNP had said day before yesterday, Tariq Ji had mentioned that people have the right to know the roadmap from this government, and whenever they ask for the roadmap, they should not feel, angered by it or etc. So the reaction of the Jamaat Islami and the chief advisor is actually not to give a roadmap. So now they have given a roadmap, and this roadmap, as I say, I think I completely agree with what Madam had mentioned, that they are possibly going to announce the political party in March and April by the students, because what they are looking at, the current government is looking at, is that they want not only minus Sheikh Hasina, they want a government minus BNP. So this whole ideology of bringing out only the Islamic fundamentalists is the only reason why he has announced it, and he has announced it so that nobody could put pressure on him. So because of the change in the administration in the US, he has not announced it. He had announced this basically to ambush, the Trump administration, so that nobody else could come, including the Trump administration, could come and tell him to organize the election in 3 months' time. Now he has announced the election, to be held 1.5 years later. So he has effectively ambushed the American government, the incoming American government, and I could possibly should go as far as saying that this is something which has been done by the Democratic government, in the US before they are, going out of power. They are doing lots of things, and this announcement, you can't prove it. I'm sure, somewhere the American administration, the current administration, has advised Yunus that you announce in this manner, then you have some time to do whatever you want to do. And if you look at events all over the world, the events in Ukraine, which was quite unthinkable, the Ukrainian government using the Americans and the British armory against the Russians. Then you have the Syrians suddenly, falling apart. So that, if this Assad government had not fallen, then, America and the Trump administration would be at war with Russia in Syria. So, number of measures which the Americans are taking, and the decision by Yunus administration is only part of that.
Ambassador Basi Mukherjee, the question I have to ask you is that what do you think made Mohammad Yunus and his caretaker government even announce these elections?
I would completely agree with my co-panelists that you cannot rule out the American deep state because there have been certain strange developments in the last 6 weeks which appear to indicate the hand of the American deep state before Trump comes to power. And as he said, I would agree with him that this is in order to preempt any pressure from the Trump administration post 20th January to announce elections and to hold free and fair elections with all parties, BNP, Awami League, all political parties, within 3 months of the Trump administration coming to power, that is to say, give or take, by the end of March 2025. I would actually think that he has made this announcement, but there is nothing to stop the Trump administration from telling Yunus that this is too far a deadline. Okay. The country is falling apart, and prepone and have free and fair elections, where we will send election observers from the European Union, from the United States, from the UN, etc., which is what is often done when you have this kind of a situation. So I don't think that we have heard the end of it at all. But any effort by Yunus to try to keep the BNP out of free and fair elections will result in widespread rioting and perhaps the coming together of Awami League and BNP as they have in the past, because the BNP has also said that they don't think that the Awami League should be kept out of the election. They want a free and fair election which is internationally recognized, and they feel that they can win a free and fair election. That is up to the people of Bangladesh to decide who they want in power. If it's a free and fair election, whoever wins is the legitimate government of Bangladesh, whereas the present government is actually illegitimate because it has exceeded the time permitted in the Bangladeshi constitution more than 3 months to organize these elections. Moreover, these students have not yet organized themselves, and he is giving them time so that a new political party can come up, which he hopes can hijack these elections and bring them into power. And these are very dangerous developments, particularly for India, given the fact that we have such a huge land boundary with Bangladesh, and given the kind of hostility that is being manifested towards India on a daily basis and towards minorities, it actually is an extremely serious development to think that elections in Bangladesh, if ever they are to be held, have been postponed in this manner, possibly for not just 1 year, but 15 months. And who knows, after 15 months, he may try to postpone it again. So, in effect, we are in a situation where Bangladesh is slipping into non-democratic rule,
Right.
despite the clear intent of the political parties in Bangladesh to insist on free and fair elections, including the BNP.
Right. Suhas, the question here is that it will be the Bangladeshis who will suffer, it will be the minorities who will suffer until that election is held. And this caretaker government, which is already breaching so many norms by holding an election so late, by announcing elections to be held so late, has been extremely unsuccessful in keeping law and order on ground. So it doesn't have the merits to continue for very long.
Well, they do not have any merits, and I agree with what Madam Khaji mentioned, that that they will fall apart. And I think 1.5 years time is too long. I mean, people expect the government to deliver on basic issues, whether it's employment, job security, or basic law and order. And in Dhaka and elsewhere, you cannot go out. And the kind of violence which is taking place across the country, it's actually a jungle raj. Even if you go to the police stations, police will not take up the case. So it's not some social media creation. If you are a minority, of course, you are at the receiving end more than the others. But across the spectrum, there is no rule of law. And the problem is, this government actually, even though Muhammad Yunus is the head of the government, they are actually not tied to each other. They have never worked together. And every advisor is acting with his or her own whims and fancies. There is no coordination even to run the government. In fact, the military are not intervening, because if they intervene or they use the the powers which is given to them, that's the magisterial powers, then they will be held accountable. So there is absolute fear, because the country is being run not only against the minorities, but against the general population with actually mob sentiment. So when you have a mob rule, obviously, it will lead to complete injustice. So nobody can feel secure. You cannot go out your own home and feel secure. So those things are not being reported on a daily basis, because there are far too many incidents to report. So there is no rule of law. And at the end of the day, I think you have to remember one thing: Yunus is not an administrator, and possibly if you could sense when he speaks, he even doesn't realize the implication of the words he is using or the way he is speaking. He is a Nobel laureate. He is treating himself as demigod in Bangladesh, when he is actually a local union parishad chairman kind of a mentality. So that's why we have a situation where I think the interim government is bound to fail for a number of reasons. At the moment, it is surviving because it is getting enough loans from the ADB as well as the the IMF. So some of the banks are giving funds, but once these funds run through, where is he going to get it from? I mean, if you look at the entire garments industry, in the last quarter, the garments industry in India had grown by 13%. The garment industry had grown by 15% in Vietnam, and Bangladesh was barely 5%. Now you have a series of strikes in the garment industry. So they do not even have enough foreign reserves, and it's the country where people are going to invest, because their rating, as given by the Moody's in the last report, it was about B2, which is a junk status. So nobody is going to come. So there are no funds whatsoever. And at this point in time, even the government employees are not being paid salaries. So he's ruling a country, thinking that he's getting enough money and he's blaming everything on Sheikh Hasina, but nothing is functioning there. If you do not pay enough money to the Gundas of the BNP or the Jamaat Islami or the students, you cannot operate. So in that kind of a situation, the government has to collapse. And my fear is the Bangladesh government will collapse before that, and the implications for India would be very dangerous.
Right, I was about to ask that, Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, isn't it? What can India do to shield itself from all that's going on across the border?
We need to be very vigilant. In my perspective, but that's a decision the government and the armed forces have to take. We should move at least another battalion to the Indo-Bangladesh border. We should seal the border. We should make sure that there are no illegal crossings. And we should make it very clear that those who are being targeted in this manner are Bangladeshi citizens, and that Bangladesh and its constitution was created on the basis that the Bengali language, culture and civilization is more important for people in Bangladesh than religion. It was on that basis that it was called a secular constitution. It was on that basis that the father of the Bangladeshi nation, whose name is now being taken out even from banknotes in Bangladesh, it was on that basis that Bangladesh was created. So they have to give protection to their minorities, and we have to protect our citizens in the east, in West Bengal, my home state, in Assam, in the northeast, etc. And we have to, if necessary, bring in more forces of Indian Armed Forces to ensure that no illegal border crossings take place. And you might have heard the laughable pronouncements of some retired Bangladeshi army officers boasting that they're going to annex West Bengal, Assam, Northeast, and create an Islamic caliphate in that area. It is laughable, but it is also dangerous, because in my perspective, it shows that unless UNIS understands what is happening, Bangladesh is sliding towards fascism. And when a state becomes fascist, then all its neighbors have to be very careful. We will be very careful, and I was very proud of the response given by the West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, who said, "Do it. Do you think that when you will be coming, we will be eating lollipops and waiting for you?" I think that was very well said by Mrs. Mamata Banerjee.
All right, we will leave it at that. I'm afraid we're completely out of time over here. Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee and Suhas Chakma, thank you so much for taking time out to speak to us here on the News 9 Plus show.